Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Expanders Club podcast. I am your host, your friend, your spiritual bestie, Brooke Harris, and I am so happy to be here. So grateful to have you joining me. This week's episode is a good one. Excited to get into that, but first I want to talk to you guys about intuition for a moment. We are officially, yesterday marked 3 weeks into our new life, our quantum leap, our move to across the country to North Carolina. And, you know, we're just kind of starting to get settled, coming up for air, starting to get into some like rhythms and routines and know what side is up and what side is down. And I was thinking about it this morning and realizing that, I don't know if I shared this with you guys, but we moved 2 weeks early. And we moved 2 weeks early. A big part of it was the fires in Los Angeles and, you know, the air quality, and I didn't feel safe. And a lot of it wasn't super logical. Like, we weren't super close to the fires, you know, whatever. It was intuition. I had this like nagging intuition that we needed to leave 2 weeks early. It cost us more money to do because we still had to pay for our lease in Los Angeles, and then we had to pay to pick up a lease here in North Carolina. It logically didn't make sense. And it took me a few days to convince my husband of it. And it came down to, you know, I didn't have a solid argument, to be honest, or a solid logical argument. Part of it, again, was the air quality and that I didn't feel safe, but I just couldn't get it off of my mind that we needed to leave early and we needed to move 2 weeks early. And I couldn't let it go. And I wouldn't let it go. And my husband's not unfamiliar with those types of situations. But I just kept telling him, I don't, you know, I can't put it into words, but fully, but like we need to leave early, and I won't feel good until we agree that we're going to leave 2 weeks early. So he got on board, bless his soul. And we left 2 weeks early. And, you know, had we stayed, I don't think anything more dangerous would have happened. Like, I just had this feeling that we were no longer in the right place, right? And staying an extra 2 weeks, we just felt like, it felt like that was going to feel like so long and awful. And like my skin was crawling thinking about it. And reflecting today on what we've accomplished being in Wilmington early for those extra 2 weeks, realizing, wow, the things that we set my daughter up for, her school that she's in now, her nanny, the school that we were able to register her for next year, none of that would have happened were we 2 weeks behind. You know, we luckily got a spot, like one spot, because a kid moved in school for the rest of the season. Her farm school that I told you guys about that she's going to next year, like, had we been 2 weeks later on discovering that and signing up for that, like, for sure there would have been no spots. The nanny came to us at a perfect time, and she, for her and for us, and was a blessing. So, you know, I think all of it to say, like, intuition and logic don't always pair up perfectly, right? We can't always put logical reasons behind our intuitive hits. And luckily I've exercised my intuition enough that I know when I'm feeling something, it is to not to be ignored, even if it doesn't line up logically, especially for my very logical, very grounded husband. You know, again, luckily he's been through this a few times, and he knows that when I'm kind of set on something, it's probably not going to change. So he reluctantly turns willingly into going along with me. But just sharing like the intuition, the hit on the intuition didn't make sense, except for in hindsight. And that will happen a lot. That happens a lot with intuition. Like it doesn't make sense except for in hindsight. And the practice and the ask is to trust in the moment and have certainty that your intuition is guiding you and will not lead you in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to share that example, like a very simple, very real world example of following intuition beyond logic and letting the logic kind of back it up later on. Okay, today is Monday, March 10th. And if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen every Monday I share an update for the week. And I sit down in the morning, I channel, I ask for a message for the collective for the week, messages, themes, like anything that will help us really make the most of our week or what we should be thinking about. And guys, this week's message is it. It's it. It's the one. It's the one we've been waiting for. This is the week we've been waiting for. I'm still digging into the astrology, but it sounds like the astrology line is lining up perfectly with the message that I gained from the universe, the quantum, while channeling this morning. And this is the week that we are reborn. This is the week that we choose alignment, that we choose our soul, that we step into our soul's purpose. Read it, go on Instagram if you can, _Brooke_Harris, and it's under my like channel. I think it's called like it's called Musings. I think Instagram calls them channels, and you can read the whole message for the collective. But that is essentially it. Like it's time to choose our soul. They gave me an affirmation. This is the affirmation that we are all to use this week to step into this path, this journey of true alignment. And the affirmation is, I choose to align with my soul. It's exciting. It is a journey of limitlessness, of freedom, of following our true mission and true purpose. It's what we've all been doing the work for. And now we're just like at the door. Are you going to say yes, or are you going to stay where you are? And I think everyone listening is going to say yes and walk through that door. So super excited. And I'm here with you. And I think we saw this coming in the March reading, right? And it's pretty much on time, smack dab in the middle of the month. The rebirth is, the transformation is ready to happen. And so grateful to be doing it with you guys by my side. And of course, as it would, this episode with my friend Karin lines up perfectly with this message. Karin is an author, an artist, and the founder of a lifestyle brand rooted in the power of presence. She is an incredible soul, a very wise soul. And we recorded this episode actually at the end of January. So it's been over a month. And when we recorded it, I was like, oh, this is such a great episode. I'm so excited to share. And for some reason, it kept getting pushed. And here we are, second week of March, and I'm launching it. And it's like, of course, the messages in this episode, the tools she shares, the wisdom she shares are so perfect for exactly what the collective is going through this week. So definitely have your the notes app on your phone or your notebook ready while you're listening to this. We talk about a lot of things. We start with talking about Karin's journey, the trauma that led her kind of to her awakening on her healing journey. We talk a lot about how trauma can actually be a gift. And I apologize if that is triggering for some of you, but because when you're in it, it certainly doesn't feel that way. But again, this is something that in hindsight, trauma, if you choose to allow it to be a gift, right? If you allow trauma to change you, if you allow trauma to wake you up, if you allow it to make you ask, why is this happening? What more is there? What am I supposed to do with this? It can be a true gift right? If you can turn your power into purpose, which so many of us are and have. And I really think that is kind of the, you know, the, I don't want to say purpose, but it is one of the missions of our generation. We are turning our trauma into purpose. And I say this in the episode, hopefully we are the last ones that have to do that, right? Like, I don't want my kid to have trauma in order to be conscious, to be awakened. I hopefully will raise an awakened child that doesn't have to peel back layers and doesn't have to hit rock bottom in order to seek their soul's mission and something higher. But hey, that's the cards we were given. And, you know, if we look at the generations before us, like, I think we are actually pretty lucky to have the opportunity to go through so much in a lifetime and so much transformation. And so many of us are dealt with trauma at such a young age, and it started to transform us at a young age. And now we have this opportunity in our adult life to really expand and really explore what our purpose, our mission, our soul's reason for being here is. And I think that that is a really beautiful and incredible thing that we are really lucky for. So I personally, it's even hard for me to say, like, I personally would not, I don't even know if I can say it, you guys. I am grateful for my trauma, that I can say. What I was going to say is I would not trade in my trauma, or I would not wish my trauma away. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. My human self kind of wonders, like, could there have been a little less trauma to get here? You know, could we have done it? Like, could we have chosen like just maybe a tiny bit higher of a timeline and a little bit easier of a path? I don't know. But it is what it is. And what I do know is my trauma has transformed me. And I am so grateful for that. And I hope that that is something that you guys can use and relate to and feel good about. And if you are in the middle of trauma, like, know that you have the power to alchemize it. You have the power to let it transform you. You have the power to transform it into a purpose and something good. So that is just a small part of the episode. Sorry to go off on a tangent. Clearly something that I feel passionate about. But Karin gives a lot of tips of how she transformed her trauma into her awakening, the tools she uses every day to stay connected to the light, to stay expanded, to live in her highest vibration. She talks about how she relates to and follows and accesses her intuition and how much that's helped her expand. And one of the biggest things that I love that we talk about is the ability that we all have to create our own reality, and all the little things that we can do that can put us in the vibration where we get to create our own reality, because that to me is what we are born here to do. That is what we've come here in this physical form to do, is to create the reality, create these beautiful, magnetic, massive lives that we want, that we, were meant to experience. And also, that doesn't mean that you just automatically do that, or at least our generation who has been through trauma, we need to choose. We need to choose in every moment to create our life. We need to choose the light. We need to choose to act like the light. We need to choose to be the light. We need to choose to respond like the light. We need to choose the highest timeline. We need to choose the most expansive version of ourselves in every moment. So it is a constant act of choosing to create your own life. And it's these tiny moments. And Karin has a lot of experience. She gives an example of this. She talks about this a lot. But choosing to act like the light in every moment. And if you do nothing else on your spiritual journey, just that, just moment by moment, choosing to act like the light, choosing the highest vibration, that is the stuff of timeline hopping, of quantum leaps, of evolution. That is how you evolve. That is how you get all the things. That's how you magnetize, manifest, like pick the buzzy spiritual word. And it all really comes down to choosing to be the light in every moment. I think this episode with Karin is going to be really inspiring for you guys. She, again, has incredible wisdom. She is an author of 2 books. You can tell just by listening to her that she is truly living and embodying everything that she talks about. And she has had a wealth of experience that has kind of validated her process and all these steps in her life. I hope you enjoy. Like, we had so much fun recording this. Again, Karin is a wealth of knowledge and gives really great practical tools that will be really useful for this week of transformation, of rebirth, of all of us choosing to align with our soul and only our soul. All right. Big week. I'm here with you guys. I'm doing the work. Reach out if you need anything. Reach out if you have any questions. If you are looking to have a deeper understanding of your soul's purpose, your soul's mission, your superpowers, you can always book an oracle session with me. That is kind of my specialty and where I thrive, is seeing and communicating with your soul and understanding what your soul needs and wants in this lifetime and sharing that information with you. So you can find my sessions on my Instagram, _Brooke_Harris. Just click the link, book in a session, and we'll get chatting with your soul. All right. Can't wait for you guys to hear this, and let me know how your week of rebirth, transformation, stepping through the portal goes. All right. Love you guys. Thanks, Karin. Appreciate you. All right, my friend. There is no one that I would rather spend the last day of January with this month. We're recording this on January 31st, the last day of maybe the longest month of my life. And I think the whole collective is feeling that. How are you feeling today?
Exactly the same. I feel like 2025 actually starts tomorrow, February 1st.
Yes.
And this was like a trial run where we learned a lot of things and had a massive purge. And now it's like, okay, breath of fresh air. We're starting over. It's a new month. It's a new beginning. So I'm feeling really excited for 11:59 p.m. or sorry, 12 a.m. for a new beginning.
Yeah, you are so dead on. It does feel like that. And I haven't fully tapped into the energy of February yet. I'll do like a February energetic reading for the podcast within the first few days, because I like to have a few days to like be in it. But it does feel like it's going to be very different. And it, just like you described, it feels like it's going to be a breath of fresh air. Maybe not quite as big of one as we want and deserve. But like, what did we, I think it's a good moment to reflect on, like, what did we learn from January? How did it transform us? And how has it like opened our eyes to moving forward in a different way?
Totally. And I feel like I learned so much in January. And sometimes it's so crazy to me how when you're going through something, you're like, I'm not growing. Like, why am I feeling this again? Am I not healing? Da 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 da. And then a week later, you're like, oh my God, I was expanding so much
So
and I
much.
didn't even realize it. And now I feel like I have so many different beliefs and thoughts that I'm really excited to continue to like I feel like I processed a lot in January, and now I'm going to start like truly embodying that on less of a conscious level, and it just being my way of being.
Yes.
So I'm excited for that.
Yes, you're exactly right. That's exactly how it works. Like, first we like need our brains to kind of understand, then we need to start to do the things to like give the experience and the positive outcomes, right? And then all of a sudden you just like are. And I think this year, I say this like for both you and I, and also for everyone listening, to prepare and accept, like, I think we are going to change every single day, like in really big ways. And like, give yourself grace for that. And it's a good thing, right? It's scary and it feels really uncomfortable. And I think we're all already feeling uncomfortable. So maybe January was just like, get uncomfortable. Like, here's how you get uncomfortable. And I think like giving ourselves grace and the people around us to show up differently as a new person every single day, like, is actually really exciting and cool.
Yeah. Something that I really try to live by is there's the famous quote of like, be the best version of yourself. And even just years ago, I kind of like coined this new version of that, which was I'm just trying to be a better version of myself than I
Mm,
was yesterday.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And because otherwise, when you say the best version of yourself, there's this threshold that you have to
Yes.
meet. And then it's like, okay, once I arrive there, then there's no more expansion, there's no more growth. And so by telling myself, as long as I'm doing my best every day, that's what's going to lead me to be better tomorrow.
Yes.
And even if I might not think that's the case, I have more wisdom, I have more experiences. It is inherently true.
Yes.
So I feel like every day it's like, I'm better than I was yesterday. I'm better than I was a week ago. I'm better than I was a month ago. And by the end of 2025, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I don't even recognize that version.
Yes, and you have to choose that though, right? Like, you are so impressive because you are willing to choose that and show up and do that every day. And I think a lot of us are at that point where it's like, yes, that totally resonates. And also I'm willing to do the work.
Mhm.
But not everyone is choosing to do the work. And it really is that easy though. All you have to do is
Mhm.
choose today to make better choices or be a
Yeah.
better version than you were yesterday. It's not that hard.
No one's gonna come and save you. Like, no one's gonna do it for you. And I think there's a lot of resistance because of fear of what people might discover within themselves. Like, when you really go inwards, you have to clean up your own garbage, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are terrified to even start that, but you have to want it so badly. Like, if you have a dream or goal or a life you want to live, you have to hold on to that vision. Otherwise, you'll just stay where you are and nothing will change, and nothing changes if nothing changes. And like, I'm not special, you're not special. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we're all the same
absolutely.
in that way. And so, if we all just give ourselves a shot to try and see what happens, I can promise everyone, if you do the inner work, even just for a week, you will feel so different. And that
Yes.
is going to give you so much drive to be like, why would I not do this inner work?
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
reality is so much better. My mind is more clear. I'm more energized. I'm happier. So my only prayer is that people just give themselves the chance to do that inner work, because it's our birthright to heal and evolve and grow and live the life we've always wanted to live.
Yes. And unfortunately, a lot of us get there through you and I have like similar paths, or a lot of us that are where we are on our healing journeys. We get there through trauma,
Hmm.
right? And it's not necessarily the beginning of our journey of making change, is not necessarily I want to make change because I want to be the best version of myself. It is, I need to make change because I am
Hmm.
desperate. And so I want to, if you're open to it, I'd love to tap into like your story and your journey a bit, because you are this incredible light force. You are so wise. You have 2 books out. You've accomplished so much at such a young age. And I think that it's because it's because you've dealt with so much and you started dealing with so much at a young age that it just
Hmm.
like was the catalyst to transition you so quickly, or push you so far that you had to choose the complete opposite direction.
Totally. And there's a quote, it's not mine. It's like, sometimes your pain in life is so hard because your calling is much higher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to give a little backstory, ever since I was 12, I had digestive and gut issues. When I went into my teenage years, it started to turn into more hormonal issues. When I went to college, it was more of like a full body issue, chronic fatigue, chronic bloating, eating disorder, like all these different things. Eventually, in my uh, early 20s, I was diagnosed with SIBO and leaky gut and dysbiosis, and I was anemic and I had adrenal fatigue, and like my body was so imbalanced. And I healed a lot through that process of healing my gut and my hormones. But eventually, I wasn't learning the lesson and I wasn't going really inwards. And I was finally diagnosed with endometriosis in January of 2023. So about literally 2 years ago at this point. And It was honestly the greatest diagnosis, to be honest, like to finally be like, okay, something has been wrong and my intuition all this time was right. Like I had a lot of pelvic pain and I felt like there was a blockage, and every doctor was like, it's all in your head, just take this medication, go on birth control. And that's why I never listened to my intuition, because everyone told me not to. And after that diagnosis, I ended up getting surgery to remove the endo, which a month later I was feeling amazing. But then I started pressuring myself. You have to heal by the end of summer, and you have to like start, your life starts after the end of summer, and you have to by this date. And that pressure, that anxiety, that fear of like, oh my gosh, it's now August and I'm not healed yet, like the whole thing, I ended up giving myself endo symptoms without having endometriosis anymore. So the same exact pelvic pain, the bladder pressure, the bloating, the hormonal imbalances. And that was what led to my spiritual awakening, where I realized it is my thoughts, my beliefs, and my emotions that are causing physical symptoms. And
Yes.
that's all they were. They were symptoms. I also was having a lot of whack-a-mole things happen, like getting fevers and ear infections and fungal infections. And all of a sudden I was allergic to nuts, even though I've eaten them my entire life. Like all these different things. And I've been living a mindful life since I was a teenager. I've always been very creative. I've always been really strong with my intuition. Like I've always known things and I didn't know why I knew them, but I always thought I was a little different and weird and all those different things. And I had been meditating for years. I've been eating clean for years. I've been reading Eckhart Tolle and Joe Dispenza and like all these different things, but I hadn't learned the lesson yet. And I now think that, actually, no, I know that endometriosis being diagnosed was my biggest blessing, because it really pushed me to do the deeper inner emotional trauma healing. And so what that process looked like was doing somatic journeys, breathwork journeys, subconscious rewiring. And it's so crazy because it all stemmed from a lack of self-worth and lack of safety.
Yeah.
And it was the
Yep.
first time that I actually felt my trauma over the years. Growing up, I'm Armenian. I grew up in a Middle Eastern household, and my parents are the most extraordinary parents ever. And at the same time, I wasn't really taught how to feel my emotions. And so as a child, I learned to suppress, and I suppressed, and I wouldn't cry and I wouldn't scream and I wouldn't feel things. And I didn't know what anxiety was, because in a Middle Eastern household, like that doesn't exist. Like, like all these things, which I understand, right? Like my parents had their own journeys and that's what they
Yes.
learned.
Yep.
And so much love to them for that. They did the best they could.
On one hand, with our parents, I think our generation is like, okay, we understand you did the best that you could. And also, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
the
I know,
fuck?
right?
Like, what were you
Did not
thinking?
to cry? What?
Yes.
But thank God for that now, because I appreciate my emotions so much more now.
Yes.
Like when I
Mm.
cry, I'm like, yes,
What
let me.
are what are your astrology signs? Do you know your top three?
Yeah, so I'm a sun Sagittarius, moon Sagittarius, and my rising is Taurus. So I do have a lot of
Wait,
stubbornness.
what's your moon?
Sagittarius.
Oh wow, you're double Sag,
Yeah.
and wow, okay,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
And do you know what your Chiron is?
It's in the sixth house.
Okay,
Wait,
well,
I have to know that. I don't know.
no,
The wounded healer is all I
yeah, it would be really, I'd be really curious to hear what your Chiron is and to see how it associates with maybe the lack of safety or lack of self-worth.
It's in my sixth house, with which I think is about health and healing and alternative
Yes,
forms of that.
it's very interesting astrology. I love it.
Yeah. And so once I started doing the deeper emotional work, that's when I recognized all of my limiting beliefs, which were creating my reality. So I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of healing. I'm broken. Um, I'm
Broken,
not
that
I'm
one.
not lovable. Like all of these beliefs that in retrospect, I'm like, how did I ever believe that? how did I ever believe that? Because now I'm like, of course I'm lovable. I was built on the foundation of love. Of course I'm enough. I was born into this universe without having done anything, and I was loved unconditionally, right? Like, and so it wasn't until I started rewiring those belief systems that my body started to heal, my heart opened up. I was living with such a closed heart throughout my 20s, to be honest, not letting the light in, not letting the love in. I, you know, wouldn't, I couldn't receive a compliment because I couldn't recognize that within myself. And so now, a year later, some of those limiting beliefs definitely still come up, but my first thought is that's a thought, that's not what I believe.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I don't associate myself with that anymore. And even if when those triggers and tests come back up to the surface, my initial thought is yes, I'm contracting right now because I'm about to expand and it's
Yes.
happening for me, and God has a plan, and I will one day look back on this, air quote mountain, and I'll be like, wow, that was just a little stepping stone. It wasn't even as big as I thought it was. So that's kind of the journey that I've been on. And I'm still part of going through that. I think part of the journey with a spiritual awakening is like you awaken yourself through that. You start understanding who you are and why you are the way you are. And then you start learning these new truths and intellectualizing this new wisdom. But it doesn't end there. It's like you can learn and hear all these different powerful thoughts and concepts and ideas and truths, but it's a different journey to truly embody them. And I feel like I'm still on that embodiment journey, which is a really beautiful place to be because that means I've come so far.
Yeah. I mean, incredible you have. And it also is, even once you embody them, like there's no, in a very encouraging way, there's no end to this journey, right? The
Totally.
universe is vast and limitless. So there's no end to how much we can expand in this physical form. But once you embody it, great, but you're also still living this human experience, which we
Mhm.
chose. We chose to be here on the planet at this time in these bodies. And so you can't, it's almost like you have to figure out how to bring the two together. Like you can't be so spiritual that you're not operating in the human
Mhm.
experience, right? Because that's why you're here. And you can't be so human that you're forgetting how big and how expansive and how enormous you are and what you're capable of. So even when you like even the most enlightened person, it is still this constant like
Mhm.
balance, and that's part of the fun of it, and it's part of the interesting. And just like you touched on, it's like that human experience that actually help is the catalyst to help us grow. If you hadn't gotten your thoughts and emotions and fears manifested literally, like your body was screaming at you, giving
Mhm.
you the signs. You couldn't figure that out. So it literally manifested in physical form and said, hey,
Mhm.
here it is. You did what any person would do and you got it physically removed, right? And then your body was like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
That's that was not the issue. Like the issues are still here. So like what a freaking blessing for you to have that physical thing and then to be shown like no, it's not the physical
Mhm.
thing, it's not the diagnosis, this is you, this is coming from you, and this is something you have the power to get a grip of and control.
Yeah. And I will say there is another part of it. This was another limiting belief of like, I did this to myself. And there was a
Mm,
lot of resentment that
that's
I also worked through of like,
yes.
I keep doing this to myself. Oh my gosh, I have another symptom. Like, I'm currently going through a health flare up right now. And there was the thought of, you keep doing this because you're not learning and you're not as evolved as you think you are. And you're not learning the lesson and it's going to keep happening. And it's a lot of a conscious effort to not identify with that because it isn't my fault. It isn't, there are some things that we can't explain, but it is our role to change that. And like
Yes.
now when I look back on my entire health journey, I am at so much peace with it. I am so blessed and grateful for it. And I wouldn't change a single thing. Even though right now I'm having a health flare up, I'm like, yes, like thank God, because I was settling for a while, thinking I was like, I'm good where I'm at, but I was still settling. And this is like the universe being like, no, 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 we don't want you to settle because you could feel even better than you ever have. So,
Yeah, and something that came through when you were saying that is that your like soul is the word attached is coming, but that's not right. Like your soul has so much light that you just need to expand your vessel to receive
mhm,
that. That's what's happening when these flare-ups come. It's not even necessarily like, it's more of just like that's the way that the universe is communicating with you to get your attention. And it's just like, hey, just tune into what's the little thing you need to tune into to expand your vessel because your light is coming in hot and heavy and it's
mhm,
like ready for you, you know?
mhm,
So I think that it can be a really positive thing. And the sooner you can just see it as like, hey, this is just like if someone was pushing a button on your shoulder to be like, check this out, you know, it's like, oh, this is my sign. What is it telling me? And then let
mhm,
me make that adjustment because it's
mhm,
literally just light, the light that you are and have access to trying to come into your body.
mhm, mhm. And it's so crazy because I used to get really frustrated when I would get a physical symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now I've really deciphered the silent language that my body speaks. And I think for so long, I resented my body and I resented my mind for creating the symptoms in my
Yes.
body
Yep.
until I realized, my soul chose this body for a reason to experience these lessons that only this body can manifests. And everything that I've experienced, my soul has experienced in this life has manifested through my body. The joy, the emotions, the laughter, the places I get to see, the movement, all of it, the dancing, like everything. How could I ever resent the vessel that allows my soul to like live in, like
Yes.
create from?
Y-
Like my hands are what wrote my books. Like how could I ever resent my body,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest key connection that I learned throughout my journey was remembering like it's not mind or body or soul, it's the unification of it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
learning to unconditionally love every aspect of that is what brings those entities together.
Yes. That is flow. When you are in a flow state, that is your mind connected to your body and
Mhm.
soul all operating as one.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the resentment piece is like so relatable and it's a chapter of the journey that I think a lot of people don't really talk about. But like, yes, the like why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Like, why did I have this body? Why can't I figure this out? Like, I had my own big chapter of resentment through my Lyme disease, which is, you know, been a blessing.
Mhm.
It's a similar thing. It's like this is what's helping your vessel expand for the light, but yeah, the resentment is very, very relatable. And it's so interesting, the physical symptoms, because I have something to share with you that you and I did an oracle session
Mhm.
on December 24th,
Mhm.
Christmas Eve. And something happened after that, and I got a really like very clear insight for you that I want to share with you. And it's so interesting that you've been through the journey that you have with your body and physical symptoms because for about 2 days before our session, I was having this really insane foot pain in the left, like outside of my foot, in the weirdest area possible. The night before our session, I could barely walk. Like, and
Wow.
it was like the night before Christmas Eve. We have friends coming over on Christmas. Like, I'm trying to hobble around and get stuff ready. And it was really painful and it made no sense. I iced, I elevated, I did all the things. It wouldn't go away. And I kept getting the message that clearly, like, it was like, you need to rest. Like, it was that, you know, the time in the holidays where you convince yourself that because you don't have your work schedule, you're going to get a bunch of other stuff done.
Mhm.
Right. And I was like preparing my list and, you know, starting that kind of track of all the stuff I'm going to get done. And I kept getting the message like, no, you're not doing that this time. Like, just take the time and enjoy it. But I like I couldn't fully settle into that. So I woke up the morning before our session, which our session was early in the morning, right? It was at like my time, it was at like 6:30 in the morning, my time. And literally had been asleep all night with my foot up, hadn't put any pressure on it, and I could barely walk. Like I was limping to the table for our session and had the thought, I was like, I'm gonna have to, like, am I really gonna have to go to the emergency room on Christmas Eve? But it was so bad that I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of scared now. And I was like, I'll just see how I feel after the session, right? We do your session. It is a really beautiful, lovely session. Your energy was incredible, and like I get to benefit from that, right? In the session, because I get to be exposed to your energy. We open the Akashic records, which is just automatically healing. I get up from our session and the pain is like 50% gone.
Whoa.
I was like, whoa, okay, this is great. I walk over, my daughter's gonna get up, so I start making her breakfast and lunch to pack for school, and I put weight on my foot, and it's like still hurting a lot, but it's reduced more than it has reduced any other time. And then I stand there and literally for like I had this hit and it kind of took my breath away, and literally for 20 seconds the pain went away completely. And while the pain was gone, I got the message that Karin can see essentially like pain and heal it. Your energy can see pain and heal it. And for me to harness your energy, because I was still like, there's like remnants, and I'm still a little connected to you. And like, we're kind of always connected from now on since we agreed to share energy. And it was harness Karin's energy to heal your foot.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. So I was like, first, that's undeniable that she can, like, literally it showed me that you, and maybe, this is a skill and tool that you will need to remember. Maybe it's not super conscious for you right now, but that you can literally see almost like colors of what's ailing people, like disease or pain or illness. And you can literally remove that energy for them.
Wow.
So yes, and so that was undeniable. But I was like, okay, I don't know that I've ever harnessed anyone's energy for myself, right? Like that. And so get my daughter off to school, still in pain, but literally reduced 50% to 50%. I go and sit down and I harness your energy, and the pain goes away completely, never to come back, like gone. I get up from doing that, harnessing your energy to clear it out, and it's gone.
How do I do this to myself? What?
Yes.
Wow.
So thank you very much. My husband was literally like, you're gonna have to go to the hospital, and he's like, how did you fix that? And I was like, well, my client from this morning, like she's a healer, and I harnessed her energy. And he's like, what? Like,
whoa, like brain blasted. I have so many questions.
ask away, because I'm sure anyone listening does, but it was undeniable, and it was so powerful. Like I cannot tell you the pain that I was in, that my foot was in before that, and then it was just like poof, gone.
Wow. It's so interesting. Something that I've noticed, the more I follow what my heart is calling for and what feels in flow and alignment, which is I recently started hosting journaling workshops back in back in September. I went to Savannah, which is a resort yoga retreat in Arizona, and I held 8 different sessions with women from all different backgrounds. And all I did was steward. I just had my template. These are the questions. I gave a little spiel before each section, and I let people's intuition come through, and rewiring their beliefs and manifesting their dream life and whatnot. And I felt so fulfilled afterwards, because those women walked into that room with feeling drained and sad and dark, and they all walked out feeling so vibrant and energized and clear and excited and tapped into their own intuition. And I remember the first session, I cried afterwards, because someone came up to me and she just said, like, I have been struggling with the same problem for 10 years, and through this workshop I just got my clear answer.
Dude.
And I was so moved by that because in my mind, I didn't really do much. I just shared all I did was share my story, and this is what worked for me, and this is what I did, and these are the prompts and whatnot. And I held a virtual version of that workshop in at the end of December for my online community, and there was about 30 people, and the same thing happened
Yeah.
where these women and men were like, you just like I had a brain blast, like you just expanded me, you just unblocked something. And it was so powerful because I'm starting to realize that when I share my truth, I inevitably open other people's hearts for them to recognize that within themselves. And so I don't know if this is connected, but I think it's like the light for all of us, right? But like the light that we give has such a powerful effect on the people that we touch, even if we don't realize it. So like I didn't even know this was happening to you. I didn't know I could even do
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yes. 100%. All of that is correct. And I love like the reminder that we need each other on this journey.
Mhm.
Like we need each other for those expansive moments. Like that's what this whole podcast is about, right? But we need one another no matter how evolved we are. And I'm sure you've gotten gifts back from those clients and those situations too, even the realizations that you shared. Like we need one another. Like we need one another to help move past the logical brain. We need we need someone to see us when we're not ready to see ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Like we need help creating those moments of intention. And, you know, it is like you said before, neither you or I are special. Like everyone can tap into these gifts,
Mhm.
literally everyone. It's just a matter of like being willing to, but also like having the right environment, right? And I think that if you can create the environment, like your energy is at, when you're creating that environment, your energy is at a higher level. That energy is going to be magnetic. The highest energy in the room always brings up the other energy, and right, and that allows those people then to see things through a different lens.
Mhm.
Completely changes their perspective. And I think that's a really beautiful and simple example. And I love how simple it is because we're always like, everyone who's listening to this has been told to journal 100
Mhm.
times, right? Whether they are doing it or not, but it really is that freaking simple.
I think journaling is truly the greatest tool for anyone because all it is your subconscious and your intuition written on paper. And
Yes.
I've been journaling every single day for many years now, and a lot of the things that I wrote manifested. Like future script. So it's so funny we're talking about this too, is I'm currently writing my first screenplay, and the title of it is Walking
Amazing.
Each Other Home. And it's
Ooh.
around this notion of, it's like the famous quote, like, if only you could see yourself in my eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and how sometimes we don't recognize our own light or self-worth or love or
Yeah.
greatness until someone that we love and respect reflects it back to us. And then we give ourselves permission of like, okay, well,
Yes.
if Brooke noticed that, then maybe I can notice that in myself
Mm-hmm.
too. But it
Mm-hmm.
should be the other way around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I am who I am, and then I invite you to embrace me as
Yes.
well. And so the story that I'm writing is exactly what you said of like we need each other, right? Like to your point, I the journaling workshops that I did where people sent me all these messages and whatnot, like that did something to me where I was like it took my breath away, right? The same
Mm-hmm.
way that I did
Mm-hmm.
for them, but in a
Mm-hmm.
very different way. And a lot, like going back to my journals, like even just this morning, I wrote like m- I'm making my screenplay, or like I already sold the rights to it. Like I'm writing as if it
Yes.
happened because I believe that it already has, right?
Yes. Can you tell people what future scripting is? I think that's something that's probably a little bit newer.
Yeah, totally. So it's essentially writing your dreams and goals as if they already happened or are happening. So rather than saying, I'm going to live in Europe, or I'm going to meet my partner this year. It's like I just met my partner, or I am moving to Europe. It's like the present tense version of what you are trying to call in. And the thing is, our brains are so powerful, but
Mm-hmm.
it also doesn't know what's real or not. It can't tell from reality versus the quantum field. So
Yes.
it's kind of like this quick way to teach your brain to rewire its beliefs by believing, oh, it's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
even something I do, like I'm single, I haven't met the love of my life yet, but I have this running note on my phone called love letters to my person. And like throughout the day, if let's say I have like really good news that I want to share, or like I wish I had him to share with, I'll write
Yes.
like, hi love, like, oh my gosh, like I just had an interview with Brooke and she said I healed, like whatever.
Yes.
It's happening, right? And the reason
Yes.
why it works is because you're activating that frequency of joy and love and like genuine ecstasy as if it's happening. So
Yes.
you're kind of tricking your body into believing that it's already happened. And so even like something I do also, it's kind of like future scripting, it's kind of like journaling, but whenever I take a bath, I pretend I'm on the stage winning my Oscar and hearing my name and I'm giving my speech, or I pretend I'm on a podcast talking about my journey as if it already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because sometimes I'll start crying as if I'm actually experiencing it.
Yes.
I start
Yes.
smiling and I'm like, I'm not even there yet, but like my body feels like it is. So,
Yes. I love that so much. And I think that that is like, it's such a fun practice to put into
mhm,
place too, right? Like, who doesn't like to daydream and who doesn't
mhm.
want to like have those feelings? And I think it's also important to note, like, that's why we need to be really thoughtful about what we're exposing ourselves to because the opposite can happen too. You mentioned
Totally.
crying. Like I could be in a great mood and then like a sad song comes on and all of a sudden I'm like crying about the song
Mhm.
or I'm really sensitive like my husband's like you were so cool when we met. Like you were so much more fun. Like we were both big movie buffs and I worked in film for a while and now I like there are very few movies that I will watch because I'm like you get so emotionally attached to the
Totally.
story, the characters, like shows, and I think that's an important thing to recognize on both sides, and probably the side I'm talking about, people can relate to a little bit more, right? Because we've all been in a movie and cried, or watched a documentary and cried, or been to a scary movie, which I haven't seen a scary movie in literally 20 years. I like
I
refuse.
don't watch them. Yeah, I don't need to.
Like, why do that to yourself?
Yeah.
But we all are familiar with those feelings, right? So why can't, and it can really get you down and impact
Mhm.
you, or, you watch a sad movie before bed, then you're having sad dreams all night. So if you've experienced it in that way, then you can now believe that what Karin is saying is 100% true, that you could
Mhm.
experience the
It's just the
positive
opposite.
version.
It's the opposite side of the spectrum. And I want to touch on that a little bit too, because I used to wallow a lot. And like if I was
Mm.
in a funk, I would listen to Bon Iver all day and I would listen to slow songs. I would watch a movie that was relatable to the experience I was
Yes.
having and I would simmer in that. And now I started doing this journaling practice. It's kind of blended with IFS therapy, internal family systems. And so I'll open up I do this virtually because it's or not virtually, digitally because it helps me just get more thoughts out. And I'll say, "Hey fear, what are you feeling today?"
Mm.
And it starts talking, right? As if it's like the 10-year-old me, very childlike tone. Then I'll go to intuition, then I'll go to joy. And about 2 weeks ago I was in a funk and I was letting joy speak and I asked Joy, "What do you need right now? How can I help?" And Joy was like, "Stop watching dark movies and put on White Chicks and laugh. Like, that's what you need."
Yes. Yes.
And so I watched my favorite comedy movie. I laughed like a little girl. I was like, wait a minute, that feeling, that joy was just like itching to be released, and I had been depriving of it for so long. Now, I still love my Bon Iver baths, and if I need a good cry, I'll put on his songs, and I love that. But being really intentional about not letting your energy when you wake up dictate the rest of your day is really, really important.
There are two things that I love about that. One, like the work is not always so profound, right? Like your intuition told you to like go watch a movie.
Yeah,
Great. Awesome. Like it doesn't have to be some big, crazy, intense
totally.
thing. It's like go watch a movie that's going to shift your energy. It's like that freaking simple,
Hmm.
right? And the other thing is that you brought up is like asking,
Hmm.
communicating. Like we don't, we fester in our heads all these problems and situations and like we don't have the answers. Like if you're looking for answers, just ask. Like
Oh my gosh,
people
yeah.
always ask me how I like started to hone and really trust my intuition and like it's complicated and there's a whole long journey, right, of a million things that added up, but the one major thing that I attribute to actually being able to hear and see things is I sat down every day for probably a year with my journal and said, what do I need to hear today? What do I
Mm.
need to know today? And then I would channel the answer and do it without judgment, whatever comes out. And every time I would read it back and I'd be like, holy shit, there's no denying that there's a bigger force here, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And it's like that simple.
The same thing happens to me every single morning. I pray to God and I say, God, show me where to go, show me what to do. And I pause and I start visualizing things as I say each phrase, where to go, what to do, what to listen to, who to speak to. Like, guide me on my path so that I follow your will, your timing, and your plan. And then I also pray and I say, give me a nudge or an intuitive action that is the breadcrumb that leads me to my destiny.
Mhm.
And so what
Yes, I love that.
happens is throughout the day, I'll go about my day. All of a sudden, I'll hear a voice, go into that store.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I
this is
go
it.
in. I go
Yes,
in, end up finding my physical therapist for pelvic floor who changed my life, right?
yes,
Or it's like send this person a direct message on Instagram. Next thing you know, they want me to come on their podcast. It's little things like that. And I think intuition is I struggled with understanding how intuition works for
mm,
so long. And I was like, I need to get to the truth of this. Like, how does it work? And I wrote, sometimes I think what people struggle with is, let's say for example a relationship, right? Like intuitively you're like, I know he's not the person for me, but I can't let go yet. And so we beat ourselves up because the relationship ends 3 months later and we're like, damn it, like I knew he wasn't the one, why did I stick through it? However, I have a whole passage about this in my latest book and I write that intuition is is it doesn't miscalculate. It always leads to our expansion and the journey of becoming, right? So like yes, your intuition was right. Maybe that person wasn't for you, but at the same time your intuition also knew that there were lessons that you still needed to learn
yes.
within that 3-month period,
Hmm.
and that's why you had to go through that. And so I think the greatest way to recognize that, like something that really helped me was, let me think back on all the times that I was so in tune with my intuition and I was right. So it was like declining a job offer. No, it wasn't for me. And thank God, because I got something better after that. Or like walking into that store or reaching out to this person or starting my brand or whatever it was, even if it was like, I was stuck in traffic and I went a different route, and thank God because I found out there was an accident on the other path.
Right.
Like little things like that, you'll start to recognize, oh my gosh, like of course I can trust my intuition because that is the divine source communicating to and through us. How could it ever be wrong? You know?
Well, there's a piece that I think you might be underestimating that you have too, that it takes to be in tune with your intuition, and that's courage.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so you have to have the courage to listen,
Yeah.
and you have to have the courage to listen enough times to get that proof in hindsight, right? Because
Mhm.
we're still always scanning and looking for proof. And the proof is what then allows you to have a little more courage and like loosen the grip a bit. But you are someone who clearly has a lot of courage. And so you had the courage to say no to the job. And it's like courage and mixed with a little bit of certainty, right? And
Yeah.
faith that if this doesn't feel right, I will have the courage to say no and have faith that there's something bigger and better for me. What's for me finds me. Whatever, the language we're all familiar with, but maybe don't fully like embody and practice. Like that combination is just it's a winning combination. And
Yeah,
like the more you can lean into both, the more bigness, abundance, magnetism comes.
totally. And I will also add too is being courageous, but then also being humble enough to know that I can't do it on my own. And
Mm-hmm.
so I I pray for strength every day. I pray for clarity. I pray for hope. I pray for all these different things. Hey God, I'm really anxious today. Like I need you. And he answers, and I received that answer. And I think being humble enough to ask for help, not just in the physical world, but it's specifically in the spiritual world, that has changed so much for me because it allows me to remember I'm still a human. And I think it's what you were saying before of like, you can't have the spiritual experience without the physical and vice versa. And I think that's part of the way that I allow myself to be human and recognize like I do need support. And look, I say I surrender, and there I am being like, God, please show me a sign today. And I need that. Like I
Like
will,
I'm good, but also like
yeah, like what else are you show? Like I know you showed me that sign, but like is that like can you show me another one to make sure the sign that you showed was right?
yeah.
And I think that's good though, because it's like even the I actually love that part of me that questions a lot because this came up in my session with you, but like I need to know the truth, right? And I will never stop until I figure out what the truth is. And sometimes questioning is what allows that truth to come to the surface. So I think there's like the delicate balance of being brave and being courageous, but then also being humble enough to ask for help and and also opening your heart to receiving it. And I was actually
Yes.
having a
Yes.
conversation with a friend recently where we were saying how there are signs everywhere. There are open doors everywhere. There are paths waiting for you to walk on, but many of us don't see it. We don't Our hearts are so closed off that we can't even let it in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like the conscious practice of opening your heart, asking, receiving that makes that combination because once you start receiving, that's what builds your confidence and your courage.
And I think that when you are open to that perspective shift, you'll start to realize it in some of the smallest ways. Like you will read a text message very differently than someone who's
Mm.
activated and reactive does, right? Or you'll like hear something in a very different way. You'll hear it in a positive way and like, or a neutral way and not that big of a deal. And like that is the like lack of reactivity to the world around us is like really where the peace and flow is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you just feel at peace with all of
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And that feeling, I go in and out of that feeling.
same.
I had a long stretch and I know, January kind of threw me off, but like when you are in that feeling, you're like, nothing, nothing's a big deal. Like
Yeah.
everything is easy. I think you were saying it. I don't know if you were saying it to me off before we were recording or during the recording, like everything's easy. What did you say your new mantra is?
Everything is easy.
Yeah.
And I was basically explaining to Brooke before we started recording how let me take a step back. I think I've lived in the masculine energy for a very long time. And
Mm-hmm.
this came up in my reading too of like letting the feminine life force come out to play. And I feel like for most of my life, I forced things, I pushed things, I strived, I hustled. And I'm grateful for that because in so many areas of my life, that really serves me so well. Like I would
Yes.
not be successful creatively, financially, and whatnot had I not hustled. So there's a role for that masculine energy. But then there's also a place for me to be flowing and just receiving and letting things come to me versus me chasing them. And so I was basically explaining to Brooke how my new mantra is everything is easy. Being a New York Times bestseller, that's going to be easy. Healing my body once and for all, that's going to be easy. Meeting the love of my life, oh my gosh, I'm going to know the moment I meet him, it's going to be that easy. And
Yes.
it sounds so silly because, right, life is so hard and we have all these things that are crazy and piling up, and January threw us all off, and it could be hard. But even just telling myself things are going to be easy, I mean, even just like I'll give you an example. I work in advertising, and one of my producers, her fiance like worked in the film industry. And so I sent her a message the other day saying, I'm working on this, like would just love to pick your brain. The next day, oh my gosh, I would love to connect you with my fiance. He knows way
Yes.
more than I do. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so easy.
Yes, yes. And it is. And I think that like that that mentality, that like that is a frequency you're choosing, right? And that
Mhm.
just attracts more of that frequency.
Mhm.
And also like in spirituality, on the spiritual journey, like there is, and it's totally okay, there's a lot of like faking it till you make it, right?
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
even if it doesn't feel easy in this moment, like you continue to use that mantra, right? Because that mantra is what helps with the shift. Like even if you feel like you're lying to yourself a little bit and you're not fully believing it, it's the effort. The effort gets you 80% of the
That's,
way.
you know what it is? The preparation to receiving your manifestations is the hard part. But once you, to your point, match the frequency of what you are trying to call in, that moment is going to be easy, right? And so, of course, in the beginning, when I was saying everything is going to be easy, of course I didn't believe that. But you start you by saying it every morning, you're like, okay, it's going to be easy, it's going to be easy, it's going to be easy, and then you start looking for proof in your reality of
Mhm.
things being easy. And then that's what builds the confidence and that's what builds the self-trust. And then universe is like, okay, she's getting it. She
Yeah.
believes, her energy's raised. Let's give her an experience that validates that because she's matched it now.
I think we all need to borrow that mantra from you for the year. So thank you. I will be thinking of you every morning, and probably multiple times throughout the day as I say that mantra to myself. But I think I want to touch on something that I know you know so true, and I want you to share how it's impacted you recently. But like this is all energy, this is all frequency, right? And so it's like, what frequency are you choosing today? What frequency are you choosing in this moment?
Mhm. Something I've been asking myself every moment, especially moments that I'm triggered or pissed off or the dynamic isn't what I'm looking for. I ask myself, what would love and light do in this
Yes.
moment? How would love and light respond? And so I had a recent experience with someone in my reality where the dynamic wasn't what I wanted. It was energetically not aligned. Now, I also believe that everything in your life is a direct mirror and reflection of what you believe and what your energy is. So I was like, okay, this person is pissing me off. What does that say about me? And I took a
Hmm.
really good look of like, how am I treating this person? What is my energy when I'm
Yes.
around them? What am I
Yes.
thinking? What am I saying? And I realized she is just a reflection of my inner state. Now, there's so much power in that because I also had the thought of, wait a minute, if I just change myself and my energy, then she has to change hers. And so I started to ask myself, like, how would love and light respond? And I started to respond differently, and she reflected that. And I swear to God, in like 4 days, the entire relationship dynamic made a full 180. And now we're good. We're live.
Yes.
I have no haste. I have no resentment. I have no triggers. And that really showed me how easy it is.
Yes.
It's one choice. And so now I also ask myself in moments of fear, right? Like, I'm not feeling good today. Do I cancel my plans or do I wallow and sit at home? No. What would the light do? The light
Hmm.
would go. The light wouldn't let the fear stop her. And then what happens is I have an extraordinary magical experience. And it just goes to show when you choose the light, you're expanding your vessel more and more to receive. And it first starts off as a conscious effort. Like, I'll give you an example. I get a message. Oh, like I know how I want to respond. No, what would the light do? And the light with an
Yes.
exclamation point and fake it till you make it, right?
Yes.
And now that has just become my way of being. And so, and that happened in a month. Like that whole
Yes.
journey of like the dynamic changed in a few days, and then a month later, it's like rainbows and butterflies, and it was that easy.
I think if that's like, it's so hard to distill all the pieces that have impacted our journeys down into things that's right. It's like, okay, you want to know, here's a list of 40 different things that you
Mhm.
could do. But to me, that is in my experience with clients, like that is the single most, and it's a single, I still use it. I use it every day to shift my days when I need to. But if you can just take that pause in every moment and say, is my reaction acting like the light, or how do I be the light in this moment, and choose that, it's that simple. Like, you can forget most of the other things and just do that, and that leads down to through many other paths. But like that, I think, is the single most impactful thing that people
Yeah.
can do.
And to pair with that too, it's like, what would my higher self do in this moment? I ask
Yes.
myself that a lot as well. What would my higher self do? And when we think of our higher selves, the better version of ourselves, they're more rational, they're more composed, they're living in ease, they don't dwell, they don't worry, they're not fearful of anything. And so it's like, knowing that part of me exists, how can I just tap into that energy? And that's the same thing with the light, right? Knowing that light inside of me is already there. How can I just let that shine versus the darkness that also coexists?
And that makes the world around you better. You are literally expanding into a new vibration. So it allows the
Quantum
things that
leaping.
we had. Yes, you're quantum leaping, what we talked about earlier. We're allowing more light in your vessel to expand. It like just solves
Yeah.
a whole world of
Yeah.
issues. Um, yeah, it's pretty magical. So I want to hear about your books. I love the titles. You have this beautiful way, like, and I have resisted. I haven't actually looked into any of your work. You and I know each other in a different dimension.
Yeah.
And I love that relationship. And so like I'm just kind of like coveting that relationship. But based on the language that you have shared with me, the titles of your books, I can feel the energy. Like you have this beautiful way with words and language. And I think a lot of your wisdom comes out through words, which is pretty magical. And I'd love to hear about your books. You have two of them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And one thing that I truly believe, my favorite author, Alain de Botton, said this, and he said, what makes a book good is that we're reading it at the right moment for us. So
Hmm.
whenever people are like, I haven't read it yet, I'm like, that's fine. You're not meant to read it until you're meant to read it, and that's when it's going to hit. So I feel like
Yes.
that'll be the same
Love
case
that.
for you. Um, but yeah, so going back to the beginning of it all, when I was a little girl, I was so creative. I loved to perform and I loved to dance and I loved to put on a show and I loved to write, and art was my favorite class. Like that's who I was as a child. And when I was 16 years old, I started to write my own poetry on my notes app on my phone. And it was my way of journaling without journaling, like knowing what it was. And I typically would write when I was sad or going through something. And then over time, it turned into, also writing from a place of joy. I never thought I would ever share it with anyone. It was truly for myself, but I loved the practice of it. I always felt like a relief, or like I understood myself deeper by
Yeah.
doing that. And it was my way of really connecting with myself. Now, when I was in college, one of my best friends, her and I were going through a very similar life experience, and I wrote a poem about it. And so I just one day read it to her, and it was the first time I ever shared my work with anyone. And she teared up and she said, how did you write exactly what I'm feeling? Like, you have to share this with people. And I was like, whoa, I did not expect that. But yeah, I'm not going to share it with anyone. That's really
But
silly.
no.
Because
Mm.
I always had this fear, and this was another belief, fear of being seen, fear of being vulnerable, fear of like, like, n- it was like the whole like, I'm not good enough, but I'm also too much. Like, that's what was that battleground. So, anyways, fast forward to March of 2020, COVID started. I was at a job that wasn't fulfilling me, or no, I'm sorry, October of 2020, the idea of creating a brand about being present and living in the mindful state came to my mind. And it wasn't until March 2020 where I started to think, okay, I'm going to just start this. Like that was my intuition. Like you just got to go for it. And so long story short, I started sharing my words on Instagram, and it first was a mood board, a space to hold myself accountable, cuz I felt like I was reading so much about mindfulness and healing, but I wasn't, like, I kept falling backwards and forgetting. So I wanted something to hold me accountable to it. And then over time, I started to share my work on Instagram, and then like Rosie Huntington posted about it and all these influencers, and it started to get traction. And by the time about like 2 or 3 years into that, no, 2 years into that, I was meditating one day, and the I it was a Joe Dispenza meditation, and the idea of me being an author came through. So I channeled that vision. And a couple weeks later, I found my bucket list when I was 16 years old, and I literally wrote, like, have my poems published.
Yes.
So it was
Yes.
always my dream, but I never felt good enough for that. But I was like, I've always been very naive and delusional. Like, I don't think any dream is ever too big. And I used to think that was crazy, but now I'm like, actually, no, I'm just predicting the future and
Yep.
following it. So good delusion. And I essentially reached out to my publisher. They had been like engaging with my work. They had been following me. So as a projector in human design, I already had that invitation.
Mm-hmm.
And I messaged them, and fake it till you make it, because I lied and I said I had a manuscript and I didn't have a manuscript. I had so much work, I just hadn't compiled
Mm-hmm.
everything. They responded in 2 days and they were like, we love your work. Like, send it to us when it's ready. And so all summer of 2022, I wrote the book Beauty in the Stillness. And a lot of it, the first poem in that book is something I wrote when I was 16. So, like, I think
Wow.
only now do
Wow.
I really recognize how wise I
The
was.
wisdom. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and I didn't
incredible.
realize it at the time. And, even that book, like, I reread it all the time myself, and I'm like, wow, like, it's timeless. Like, those truths are truly timeless. And so I published that in a couple of months, went out into the world in 2023. It has a life of its own. It's,
Love
people
that.
in
Yeah.
Cape Town, South Africa, and India, like, it's getting translated right now in Arabic and Hindu. I'm like, what? Like, how is that even
Amazing. It's
possible?
amazing.
And the second book really was after my spiritual awakening. I, again, in my meditation, I had this thought of, like, this is going to be my next book. And I knew the title from the beginning. And I think part of it was also like, I will not accept me going through this pain without turning it into something
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
And I think that's also a limiting belief that I'm currently working through, which is I must suffer to spiritually grow, or I must suffer to create art. That's something I'm working through right now, because that is the journey I've been on. Like, it was through my health struggles and
Mm-hmm.
illness that I even became a writer and published books and all the work that I do now. Um, but I think overall, like, over the years of just building my community, you know, it's so fulfilling, because I'm writing from my personal
Mm-hmm.
experience, right? And I think for many of us, we all think that what we're going through is we're the only ones feeling that, right? And we all go through our own suffering, right? So for me, I was delivered these lessons and shown this light, and had all this darkness around me through the vehicle of chronic illness.
Yeah.
For some, it's addiction. For some, it's a divorce. For some, it's, sexual trauma, whatever it is. The suffering is different, but the lessons and the wisdom are pretty much the same. And so the books that I write, it's coming from my unique experience, but it's reminding me time and time and time again, we are all the same. We are all going through the same emotions. We are not alone. And it's just so fulfilling, because it was a childhood dream, and now it's taking a life of its own. And now
Yes.
I'm writing a screenplay. Like, I don't even know where I'm going, but it feels really exciting.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty incredible. And something that came through while you were speaking is like, hopefully this gives you some permission. Like, you're done being a storyteller. Like, that's
Mm,
been the role. Like, you've been storytelling and telling a story, and like you are ready to enter into the chapter where you are just a sharer of wisdom, a wisdom giver.
mm,
And so you don't need anything for that. You have the wisdom. Like, all you
mhm.
need to do is get it out
Yeah.
on paper. Yeah.
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 Oh, I love that. I feel like I'm graduating from the whole wounded healer identity, and
It's a important part of the journey, right? It all happens for a reason, and it also draws people in. It makes it
mhm,
relatable. Like you said, we've all been through this trauma. The trauma, unfortunately, is what draws most of us to
mhm,
the spiritual work. I think it'll be different for future generations, and certainly like my daughter's generation. Like, we will make sure it's different for them, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we are the generation that had to deal with trauma in order to have this spiritual awakening, to bring this consciousness to earth. That was just like that, that's our cross to bear.
In the age of
And
Aquarius, where all the truth is brought to light. So
yeah,
we started this year.
yes, which is really exciting. And you've done your job beautifully so
Thank
far. And
you.
like
Thank you
now
so
it's just like remembering your wisdom, like, hey, you can literally heal disease and pain and illness inside people by like literally like blowing it away.
So
So
how do I do that to myself? 'Cause I'm going through
yeah,
that.
let's talk and let's dig into that. Like it's so undeniable though. It was really cool.
Powerful.
I have one other client who has that same ability, and like I think to share with everyone, like we all have access to this quantum field, to this information, to this wisdom, and like we each have different specialties and different tools. And like I think that you don't even like I don't think you've even scratched the surface of what your
Wow.
like specialties and tools are. So that's really exciting.
It is. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. And what I mean by that is even like this health flare up that I'm having right now, part of me is like, not part of me, most of me is like, pause, what a pleasure. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to expand. There's so many more people for me to meet, conversations
Yes.
to have. Like, even this conversation is expanding me so deeply. It's allowing me to remember, it's allowing me to
Mm-hmm.
reflect, showing me something new. And it's these are the little tiny dots that create the sum of our lives. And so take this one moment out and I can't get to where I'm going to get to.
Yes.
Um and like
Yes.
I ask myself, like, what if where I'm at right now is preparing me for where I'm headed next? And that's what I hold on to.
And it is. It is. It always is. And
Yeah, it always.
we know that when we look back, and it's still
Yeah.
hard to remember in the moment. And I think that's the shift, right? Like the presence that you talk about. If we can just look at life as an adventure and like
Hmm.
find the joy in every moment, and like, okay, instead of like labeling things good or bad or hard or easy, it's just like, okay, this is interesting.
This is it. Yeah.
Like,
You know,
this is
one
interesting.
one book that really changed my life was The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and he
Yes.
has a chapter on death at the end, and he asks like, if you had 1 week left to live, how would you spend it? What would you
Yes.
think about? What would
Yes.
you do? Where would you go? And I ask myself that every morning. I'm like, all right, if today was the last day, would I even be stressed about my health? No.
Right. No.
Would I
No.
even be thinking about my finances? No, it doesn't matter. I'm gone. Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what what would I focus on? Love and connection and being in nature and just living an adventure, right? And I think the reality is we don't know when our time is up, so why are we not living in that
Yep.
state every
Yep.
day? And I genuinely now wake up and I'm like, it's another
I'm
day.
awake.
What's gonna happen? The magic that awaits. And sometimes that
Yes.
magic is hard and it's
Mm.
challenging, but it's still magical. It's still an adventure. And
Hmm.
just waking up every day with that beginner's mindset of like, what I currently know might not be all there is to know, or the experiences I've had might not be all I need to experience. And just keeping that openness is really important.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. I love that. So you've shared so much wisdom with us today, but tell me, you have 10 seconds with someone. It's the only time you're going to interact with them ever,
Mhm.
and you want to say something that's going to make an impact. What will you tell them?
You are infinitely and unconditionally loved, and there is a light inside of you. And what you will realize when you continue walking on your journey is that the light is not out there, it's not behind you, it's the light inside of you that will reignite if you allow it to.
Mm.
And that is the light that will carry you through the rest of your life. And only you can do that to yourself. And I
Hmm.
just compel everyone, no matter what you are going through, no matter where you are in life, allow yourself to live a beautiful life. I think
Hmm.
we don't give ourselves permission. And I just wish that everyone recognizes how loved they are, how enough they are, how beautiful and remarkable and magical divine beings we are, and just see your life change from that place.
Yes. Yes.
So
I
that was
love
way more than 10 seconds.
that's okay. They stayed to hear it. The word allow feels really
Mhm.
impactful. Allow yourself. You are the one You are the one who gets to give yourself permission. How can people find you? How can they work with you? Everyone's going to want to connect with you. So
Yeah.
please
So
tell
my
us how.
Instagram is ICIETNU. Everything is linked in my bio there. So you could buy both of my books on Amazon, Beauty in the Stillness, The Unlimited Power Within You. I have digital tools on my website. I also have a virtual journaling workshop, which is 3 hours long. So if you want to go inwards and don't know
Cool.
where to start, I think that would be a great tool for
I
you
love
to
that.
kickstart in.
Yes.
And just follow me on Instagram. Send me a message if you guys like this episode. I'm always responding to people, and I want to connect with, people who are aligned. So yeah, buy my books, read it when it's the time, the time is right. And thank you so much for
Yes.
being here.
Yes. I cannot wait to read your books.
Oh,
Beauty in the Stillness is feeling like it's the
I would say
moment for
start
me.
there because that's the introduction, that's the foundation, and then the unlimited power within you is for people who really want to go deeper and are ready to really have that shift in transformation.
Love that. Love
Well,
that.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the beauty and wisdom you put out into the world. And like, thank you for having the courage to walk the journey that is destined for you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. All right. All right, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.